Hello, 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 and welcome to the 56th episode of the Neverkusen podcast, the international English-speaking podcast about that charming little Factory 11 from the Rhine, Bayer Leverkusen. We're happy that you could join us today for a recap of Match Day 2, in which Bayer Leverkusen traveled to Stuttgart looking to continue their successful start to the season. We're going to be speaking with a special guest about the match in just a little while, but before we do, let's introduce the rest of the goat-hating, trophy-shunning crew from the various corners of the world. And more reliable than the sun rising in the east is our man out in Singapore. Patrick, how you doing today?
I hate that question, but I'm doing fine.
There's so many things you hate. Living La Vida Loca in a city with almost as many students as there are gummy bears. Tom and Bon, how are you?
Yep, had a great weekend. Doing fine, thank you.
Happy birthday, Tom.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Tom. Didn't know. How old are you?
Yes.
Fair enough. All right. Unfortunately, Frida is, she's actually back from her trip from Stuttgart, but she's not here yet. She will join us probably at some point during this podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, and we form the chaotic people that make up the Neverkusen crew. We have with us a special guest this week that I'm happy to introduce. You may already know him from Twitter, especially if you subscribe to any VfB Stuttgart news feeds. He is a passionate supporter of the team who currently resides in Cologne. Those are two things which we will not hold against him. But he is also a world traveler who I'm happy to say makes it out to the U.S. several times a year and then always documents his adventures with some eye-popping photography. He goes by the Twitter handle @Hirngabel, and we thank him for being here today. How are you, Marcel? And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, hello. Thanks for having me. I'm delighted to be part of the charming crew of the Neverkusen podcast. And thanks for having me.
Kind words. Marcel's been witnessing the chaos that is recording one of these podcasts. But yeah, thanks so much, Marcel. And we always have a couple of questions before we get into the next part of the podcast for new guests, and specifically for those who follow teams in the Bundesliga. And you live in Cologne, but you're obviously a dyed-in-the-wool Stuttgart fan. Can you explain how that allegiance came about?
By accident, more or less. As a child, I was never supporting any team in particular. I was always rooting for the good teams because I never had any strong influence by my father or by the rest of my family. So I was kind of always rooting for the good, successful teams.
So when did that change?
That actually didn't change because I just wasn't in the mood for changing teams anymore, and that happened to be the infamous season 91-92, where we if you might remember that match in Leverkusen, we won at the end.
This is not a good way to start.
Yeah, I know. No, but so I kind of stuck with the team. So that's my kind of explanation for it, if you need a real explanation. But then, despite being born in Cologne and growing up close to Cologne and also Leverkusen in the wonderful Bergisches Land, half of my family is from the Stuttgart area, so I also have some family ties to that area. So maybe that's a more romantic approach.
I like your story just fine, and I think, I can understand how the culmination of that season might have made an impression on you. One other question I have for you, it regards your Twitter name, which is Hirngabel, which translated basically comes out to brain fork. And I've just been wondering personally, why that name? What does that mean?
Also, no real explanation to that one. I kind of made it up at some point. And I kind of liked it because if you Google it, you don't find anything else on it. There's no no other thing than my tweets and my blogging back when I used to blog. So that kind of was always helpful, I thought. And yeah, it's just picking the brain in that area. So I always liked it. So it's a fun and unique name without a real backstory behind it, unfortunately.
And I can confirm what you say, that if you Google it, you only come up with information about you, because I looked it up in almost every German dictionary, and I'm talking about going back to archaic
Years of
dictionaries.
research.
It was, because I thought it may have been some type of medieval device that they used to remove the brain, and in certain cultures. But okay, that puts all my research to waste. But I'm glad to finally have an answer to that question. Well, thanks so much, Marcel. Thank you for joining us. And if I'm not mistaken, you're going to be joining us for the next part as well. Our favorite part, our beers of the world.
Beer is good. Beer is good. Beer is good. It's not. Beer is good. Beer is good. Beer is good. Let's go drink some beer.
All right, well, as is the case with the Neverkusen podcast, our Beers of the World always starts out with the guest. So, Marcel, we're going to ask you, first of all, what are you drinking this fine Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, I actually spent some thoughts on it because I figured you probably had most of the Kölsch styles or Kölsch brands from the area, so that I kind of ruled out that one. And then I have one Stuttgart beer, but I think my kind of predecessor, your usual guest Jens, had that one, so I chose actually an American beer. I still have a bottle of 1554, which is a black ale from the New Belgium brewery in my favorite state in Colorado.
Excellent. All right, 1554. I have to try that. I've not heard it.
It's pretty cool.
Interesting date for the U.S., which obviously didn't come into existence until 1775. So.
It's New Belgium brewery, so it's probably a Belgian recipe, or I think it's actually a German recipe, if I recall it correctly from the brewery tour.
Excellent. Well, enjoy your beer, and I've got a beer from Colorado as well in just a second. Tom, how about you?
Well, I didn't make it to the shops yesterday, so I've only got my regular, which perhaps some of you know is Vicula. It's a relatively affordable beer from the Ruhrgebiet, but it has a full hoppy flavor, which I like very much in a beer. So I'm pleased with that too. So cheers.
Cheers, Tom. When you say a very affordable beer, is that a way of masking the fact that it's a very cheap beer, or is it just a pretty decent beer that's affordable?
Well, it's not in the Oettinger or Hansa-Pils category. It's
a step above.
Yeah, it's €9 for a crate.
Oh, all right, that's a small step above.
Yeah, about €3 or.
All right, Patrick, how about you out in Singapore? What are you drinking?
I was happy to find a small Vietnamese convenience store, and I picked up the favorite beer I have from Vietnam. I tried it before. It's called Saigon. It's a nice lager, very foamy, and a really, really good flavor. And yeah, it's better than the Thai stuff I normally in the last week I've drunk.
All right. Well, cheers to you as
Sounds
well.
good.
Well, we've got some good news. Frida just arrived, and she is ready to take part in Beers of the World as well. Frida, welcome. And what kind of beer are you drinking today?
Thank you. Hi, guys. I'm drinking Gilden Kölsch. Really love Kölsch, and Gilden is very delicious, but not the most expensive one. So, and it's in green, golden, brown stuff bottles. I really like it. Cheers.
Cheers to you. And Marcel, you're right. We have covered most of the coaches, and that's because Frida is a big fan. I'm drinking a beer from the state of Colorado as well as a tribute to Marcel, who I knew beforehand loves coming out here. However, I've chosen to go to the extreme other end of the beer world, if you will, and I'm drinking a Coors Light, which is easily one of the worst beers in America. You may as well drink water lightly diluted with some other kind of bacteria because it's awful. But they bill themselves as being brewed from a country stream in Colorado, and well, Marcel, I dedicate this beer that I'm going to choke down in the following episode to you.
Can I take this as an insult?
Well, to our listeners, to Bayer Leverkusen fans, and to any VfB Stuttgart fans who might be listening this week, not for us, but because of Marcel, raise our glasses, cans, etc. Cheers to all of you, and cheers to you guys.
Prost.
Cheers.
Prost. Oh, that goes down awfully. All right, well, before we get into the match, I just wanted to ask Marcel briefly what his expectations have been or were this year for VfB Stuttgart. Certainly, they enter the season in some eyes as potential performers who could challenge for a European position. And we've had 2 match days gone by now. And Marcel, I was curious, what were your expectations at the beginning of the season? Have those changed a little bit? And if so, what do you see going forward? That's a lot of questions, sorry.
That's okay. I think I can wrap my head around it. In terms of expectations towards the table, towards achievements, I think being a Stuttgart fan, you always have the expectation that your team is a contender for at least sixth place and therefore participation in the Europa League. So this kind of was my expectation or hope going into the season in terms of achievements. But then there was also the expectation, or let's call it better, the hope that the style of football gets to a little bit more entertaining style of football versus the rather dire displays that we had to endure during the last few months. So that if you were asking me about a month ago, that was my expectation and my hope for the upcoming season. What has changed now? Of course, the first matches have taken place, so that kind of grounds you always a little bit, especially with the performances that we have seen so far, which were mostly not so overwhelming. So there is, I would say, a certain skepticism of where this the path will lead us now that we are on there, especially, I have to say it already now, with the coach that we're having. So I still have the hope that things will get better. I mean, we're not really famous for our good starts to a season. That hasn't changed too much with Bruno on the steering wheel. So there's always the hope that we kind of turn around things somewhere at some point in the season. But the question is, and that's is being heavily discussed among the fans now more than ever, is the question whether we can do that with the coach that we are having.
And obviously, Leverkusen fans know all too well of what you speak. Yeah, it's only the first 2 games, obviously, and certainly those mean something, but it may not be the end of the world just yet. But let's talk about the match then. And I wanted to start off by addressing Frida, because she traveled to Stuttgart to the match, which listeners might be able to acknowledge when they hear her talking. She still sounds a little bit hoarse. Frida, we walked out. Leverkusen walked out of Stuttgart Stadium with a 1-0 victory. I was just curious, from the fans' perspective, how was the time at the stadium? How was the time in Stuttgart?
Yes, it was a really nice trip, we have to say, because it was like 30 degrees and it was sunny, and you could buy beer without these stupid card stuff and everything, just pay cash and so on. Everybody was really happy about that. It was a pity the stadium wasn't full. Yeah, there were only 40,000, and not even our own standing was really crowded. There were, I don't know, maybe 200-300 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, but you can sit on this Wellenbrecher you have in every row. No, there's the possibility to do that. So it was a really relaxing match. You can see very, very good from this
Relaxing.
this area. Yeah, it was really relaxing. I was sitting there with a beer and just singing and clapping while sitting on the Wellenbrecher. It's really, really strange. Atmosphere was okay, you have to say. It's of course not typical for us to really sing a chant powerful for 90 minutes from beginning to the end, but you have to ask yourself if all the other fans of the other teams are doing this. I wouldn't say so. So yes, but it was good. Yeah, we had fun, and I really was impressed. The Cannstatter Kurve, yeah, the Stuttgart fans, they are really a lot, and if they are singing and stuff, then all of them are doing this. Then it's really loud. I was really impressed. Didn't know this before. Of course, they also didn't do this all the time. Yeah, what else to say? I will never drive by car to Stuttgart again, because in the city we were in the traffic jam for like an hour, and I really needed a toilet. I was really pissed.
There were 600 tickets sold in advance to the away fans.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, okay, maybe it was 500 or 600, but no one was sitting. You know, the sitting area was empty, and where we are standing, then the upper parts were empty too.
You could buy tickets at the gate for the standing area in the away end, and they were apparently 19 euros 50, which is rather steep for a standing ticket. Perhaps Marcel, isn't that our ticket prices generally quite high, or is that just an anomaly in general in the ground?
I don't know too much about the guest block, obviously, so I can't tell you about that. But in general, I would say our prices are probably in the upper half, at least, if not upper tier of the Bundesliga. That for sure. I mean, that doesn't help with the spectators situation right now in Stuttgart.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you next. Now, there were large amounts of empty seats, as Frida already said. Isn't that, do you think, a general problem, or is it just down to summer holidays and, well, only Leverkusen being there?
No, definitely not. I mean, I've actually checked the attendance of the first home match during the past 10 years, and there was only one game 7 years ago where we had a lower attendance. And so this was really, really not a good sign. I mean, you probably have made jokes yourself about the attendance at the Europa League games in Stuttgart in the last year. That was always...
we can understand anybody who doesn't go to Europa League games.
Yeah, that's always a crowd pleaser on Twitter, actually, during the last 1 or 2 seasons, because attendance is typically not very high during the Europa League games. But in Bundesliga games, we usually have quite a high attendance. I think last year we had the 5th highest attendance on average in the Bundesliga. So I think this should definitely worry our deciders that the attendance was that low.
Well, those visitors who did go into the stadium to watch the match this weekend were treated to a rather up and down performance from both teams and a final 1-0 victory, as we've said, for Bayer Leverkusen. I thought the match started out pretty well for the first 20 minutes and was actually, Marcel, pretty impressed with. This is something we can discuss a little bit further, but pretty impressed with the game plan, at least at the beginning of the match, Stuttgart's game plan, which seemed to involve pressing pretty highly and then also doing a fairly good job of shutting down our three offensive players. I'm just curious, too, one of the things that was really surprising was to see Stuttgart show up with three defenders along the back. Did you want to kind of talk about how you went into that game?
Yeah, I was completely stunned when I heard the interviews before the match and saw the lineup that we, for the, I think, first time ever, lined up with a back three. That I don't think we've ever done that, and now Bruno decides to do that after a national team break, which kind of was completely shocking. But then I must say I was, as you said, really impressed by the first 20, 25 minutes where we really had a really good pace, where we pressed very good, very high up the pitch, and where we were actually most of the time pretty stable in the back, which came as a surprise after the first match versus Mainz was kind of like a shootout between two very bad defenses. So that was a clear improvement over the first match there. So that was really good, but the problem was then the longer the match went on, the clearer it got that with that lineup or with the personnel that was on the pitch, there was very little room for good offensive play, very little creativity, and I always had the impression that despite being probably the more dominant team, Leverkusen always looked more dangerous than we were.
Well, I think there was lots of activity on the wings, and I think Sakai, who effectively played a wing back, and on the other side, who was it?
Rausch.
Traoré. Yeah, he was very active on the other side, and you can see that in the statistics when you look at the number of crosses. I think it was 36.
Right.
But on the other hand, relying so much on crosses against a back five such as ours, with such strong headers of the ball, it doesn't seem like the best way to gain an advantage.
Yeah, it was basically just crosses and shots from distance. There was hardly any incursion into the area. I remember there was one really good one by I think it was Traoré also, and he kind of claimed the penalty against Bender. That was really the only good incursion into the area. And Ibisevic was very well covered at all times. He didn't have a chance at all.
Yeah, that was definitely the case. And then we didn't have anyone in the central midfield area that was able to achieve any spark, any creative moments. So it was once the surprise about the good defending faded, at least I realized more and more how bad it was offensively.
Well, I mean, to your credit, to some extent, Stuttgart is also dealing with some injuries, especially to its interior defenders. So I was a little bit surprised. I really thought this would be a match in which Leverkusen would go into the opposing team's stadium and come out with a fairly convincing victory. And since we have, obviously, Stefan Kiesling on the team, who does nothing but score against Stuttgart, I thought this would be one of those days where he had at least one goal and set up another one. but that certainly wasn't the case. Guys, as far as Heung-min Song, Sydney Sam, and Stefan Kiesling were concerned, I didn't think any of them factored in very much at all, and Kiesling was maybe the best of the three just because of his constant work rate. What did you see from our offensive trio that caused this, if you will, rather impotent attack?
Well, as you mentioned in the beginning, they Stuttgart pressed very high up the pitch and thus managed to cut up the supply lines to our front three quite effectively.
But it looked like Heung-min Song had one of those games where, and you saw it last year for Hamburg, I know it's popular to say this, where he kind of just disappears for the entire match or stretches in the match. Is that something that we're still going to be, hopefully we think he grows out of that with each passing game or with each passing season, but is that something that we're realistically going to have to face with him throughout the year?
Yeah, and that's what yesterday proved, I think.
I would agree. I mean, I was never really convinced of Son. I think you kind of overpaid him with the 10 million or whatever you paid for him. He kind of hit me by surprise last weekend, but this game, I think he was more like what you can expect from him most of the time. That's my personal opinion. So,
well, we hope that you are wrong.
One scene yesterday, and I thought like, oh no, he's acting like Schürrle. No, there was one scene when he was alone in front of the goal, and he took the ball and went very fast, and then ran to the middle and shot. No, okay, not in the goal, next to the goal. I was like, oh no, it's like Schürrle. He sees one or two scenes where I think, oh, he's really talented, he's really cool, but he doesn't score. But I'm a little fan of him. I really think he's a good guy, and he will, it will be worth waiting for next match and matches after. They all not had the best match yesterday, and if everybody is behind his quality, then it's hard for one person to get out of this and be really better than the others. You know what I mean? They all had their problems yesterday.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a fair point. A lot of things weren't working up front for Leverkusen. But by the same token, it could be argued, and Patrick, you've already said it, a lot was working for Leverkusen in the back of the team and the defensive area, and so much so that even by the end of the match we were defending with 5 people back there. Apparently we felt so comfortable in defense. Patrick, he's become one of your favorite players. Emir Spahic, I thought, had a great match yesterday as well.
Stop. He's my favorite player.
He's also one of Frida's. I apologize, Frida, for not mentioning you. All right, well, Frida, you watched him then in the stadium.
Yeah.
What did you see? What did you see from Spahic?
Yeah, I could see him better in the first half, of course, because it was our goal where we were standing. And I really, really liked what I saw. He's really cool, and he really impressed all the others around me. I told to everybody, I had a friend of mine from Brazil. We studied together in Greece. He was there too, and it was his first Bundesliga match. And I would say, watch Spahic, he's really good. And he was like, yes, the Croatian guy. And I told everybody, watch Spahic, he's really good. And then, he had some really good scenes at the end.
Yeah, I think he's obviously a rock in the back of that line.
Yeah, I think this is because Hipia is our trainer. He knows how to talk to this defenseman. Really.
That might be a good point, because I thought, and I will mention this later when we're talking probably about man of the match, I thought really one of the best performances on the day was Omer Toprak, and I don't think that we mention him a lot on this podcast unless he does something that kind of catches our attention for negative reasons. But I thought he played fantastically yesterday, and he and Spahic just looked like the kind of interior defenders that you want your team to play with for the next several years.
I think Stuttgart made it easy for Spahic and Toprak to shine, really. I mean, come on, if you throw in 30 crosses or so. These are tall guys.
Maybe they were
strong in
afraid
the
of
air.
them.
I agree. It's we made it easy for the central defenders to have a good day. I mean, we don't have the
Yeah,
speed.
and our
Yeah.
side
But not
backs,
at the
those were
end.
the ones who were more suffering, like Bönisch and Donati. Those were the ones who didn't shine.
Yeah, especially Donati.
Donati has 5 good minutes. When
I thought he was
got
brilliant.
Some good passes to Bender in the first half and to Kiesling, and I liked him more than in our first match, I have to say.
I think his performance has actually been pretty polarizing, with a lot of people thinking he played terribly, because certainly during those first 20 minutes that we were talking about, Traore was running him ragged up and down the field, but it does seem as though Donati improved by the second half, and I thought actually by the second half he was one of the better players out on the pitch.
I
But
think
I
it's very
feel-
hard for a young player to play 90 minutes constantly the same good way. I had the feeling that he got into this match with every minute he got a bit better. He improved.
I would definitely agree. Sorry, go ahead, Marcel, you were saying?
I mean, there might be the fan now of the opposing team speaking out of me, but I think he might be somewhat of a risk for you in terms of his behavior on pitch.
You bring up an interesting part of the match where, Donati is probably not the favorite of Stuttgart fans today, or probably going forward. I'm so sorry. Go ahead. I interrupted, but continue with what you were saying.
I was caring for you because he might be a risk going forward in terms of his actions, because there will not always be that, or there can be a referee that might decide on several of his tacklings or actions differently than the ref yesterday. So,
But that goes both ways. You could have sent off Traore for clattering into him too.
I didn't want to start a discussion about the referee. That was not my issue. I was just talking about him as a player being a risk for you going forward. It was not. We don't have to discuss the Traore thing. Not at all. That was not one of his best moments there. But.
Yeah, I agree with you. He was quite fired up. That could be a liability. I agree.
I had to think about Vidal yesterday. He remembered me a bit to him. But I think it's not the worst thing to have such a fighter in your team. Of course, it's a risk, and he get a yellow and a red card. But the rest of us is so concentrated. Yes, it's so lazy sometimes. Expect of Kiesling, of course, that if you have such a young guy who's pushing, I think he can take some of us with him.
Yeah, but it's easier if you have Vidal in the central midfield, being a fighter with having 4 people still behind him, than having someone in the last row being a liability or being a risk taker in that regard. So that. If Donati fouls, it's way more risky than if someone in the central midfield makes a foul.
But then again, Marcel, it's the trainer's job to manage his attitude and all that. So
but
that's
he has
not the Hippier's job.
Old Spahic,
he needs to find the right balance between his aggressiveness and playing it safe, not causing any risk to the team.
I don't disagree to that.
He's lying, but it feels like he's really living for our team. It's really cool. Directly after the match, he posted on Facebook some pictures, and yes, Forza Bayer. So he's really into our team and our fans and everything. It was posted.
No, he serves an appetite of a lot of fans, and they want to see this kind of player. I think we can, if at the end the result is good, at the end of the season, then that's fine. Even if he gets a few red cards, That means he's going to get more respected in the Bundesliga, and so it's difficult to say. I mean, so far he got 2 yellows, but I mean, Reinhardt's also
But
he gets a lot of yellows, and still he manages to finish the games. So
I prefer a player fighting and getting 5 yellow cards than a player who's relaxing on the field and doesn't take any risk.
yeah, you're not the only one.
Yeah, I know. But I can only speak for myself.
Moving on.
Well, yeah, I think those are all good points about Donati, and I think that's fine. He's going to go through some growing pains. Obviously, the concern becomes then: is he going to get a red card, or is he going to make a mistake where he lets someone through in an important Champions League match? Because I think that's where we have to start thinking as well. One thing I did want to mention about
Eric, it's kind of funny that we were worried a bit about Spahic, about his after seeing those YouTube videos, Terminator and so far he's been pretty fair, and we are now worrying about Donati, who never had this kind of reputation. Just to add.
Fair point. Well, wait a minute. Getting back to Donati, though, but I wanted to say, Frida, you made a good point. You wanted to see players with a little more heart, a little more fight in the match, and I actually thought that was the one great thing that Leverkusen took from this match, because, as Marcel said, without getting into discussions about the referee or specific incidents in the match, though, I thought Donati, Bernd Leno, and Ömer Toprak showed on a couple of occasions just how much these young guys are willing to fight for Leverkusen. And I will bring up Bernd Leno because I want to get your opinion, Marcel. Obviously, he had some let's say interactions with the fans behind the goal towards the end of the match, and it didn't go out very positively on either side. But Leno's being criticized a little bit for kind of turning his back or disrespecting the club, which really brought him up and made it possible for him to make the real jump into the Bundesliga. And briefly, you can go into it as much as you want or as little as you want, because I know it's probably a topic that isn't overly enjoyable to discuss. But I was briefly curious to know what your perspective is on that idea. Did you feel any hostility towards Bernd Leno yesterday?
I'm sure there was some hostility. I wasn't in the stadium, so I don't know it. I can only imagine that he had to endure some curse words and some hostility by the fans, and that's why he kind of went a little crazy after the game. He shouldn't have done that. Definitely not. Not only because it's his youth club, but also because he just shouldn't do it as a player. Even though it kind of is hard at times, but that was definitely not very professional of him, and I didn't like it as far as I could tell it from the reports on television. But yeah, those things happen, unfortunately.
But you don't know
what did he
really
exactly do?
said to him.
Like I said, I only know from the television reports that he was supposedly doing some gestures, bad gestures.
But what kind of gestures?
Towards. They didn't record that on tape. The reporter just said that he kind of behaved a little bit derogatory towards the Cannstatter Kurve, and that's why.
How could he see it if there's no tape?
Yeah,
sorry, I'm really
I can only tell what I got from the television report. I don't think that Kakao just went over to him just without any reason. So that's why I suspect that there must have been something happening towards the audience. That's all I can say. I mean, I wasn't there on the field, so I can only go with what I know from or what I heard from the reports. And if that's happened, that's nothing he should have done.
Ask myself what
Still,
happened that Bernd Leno started shouting against fans because he's such a cool guy. Sometimes I think nobody can ever make him emotional in a bad way, you know.
Yeah,
So it has to be really hard stuff.
But
Of course, he's a professional football player. He should stand over this, as you say in German.
But I mean, it's not the first time, or it's not the first time, but he gave some interviews after he transferred to you, or in that first half of the season when he transferred to you, that were a little bit negative about Stuttgart. So, and I think Eric mentioned it himself that Leno was very fired up that match. So there was obviously some tension inside of him that probably helped that he got ticked off by the audience yesterday.
But the important part is that at the end of the game, he went to the changing rooms of Stuttgart and apologized. So that's very mature, and I don't see any middle finger involved also, or some punch or so. So I think.
But you know. In Kicker came
there's so many
report,
cameras
for
in the
example,
stadium. Everyone is trying to print the story, and they don't capture what he did. I mean, it's very strange to me.
Yeah, it's nothing that we have to discuss any further. I mean, those things happen.
Yeah.
I just wanted to answer Eric's question here, so it's not a topic that I consider being very important. Probably for some of the more diehard fans, it's a thing that was more important, but not so much for me. So I think we can proceed.
We couldn't even see this. We didn't know what was happening. Just saw some Leverkusen and some Stuttgart players running towards each other, and it was like, oh.
I think one of the things, Marcel, that you would enjoy talking about, and I'd like to hear a little bit more, is one of Stuttgart's players that was subbed on in the second half, Timo Werner. I thought he played fairly well for when he came in for the rest of the second half, and actually created a really dangerous shot that Leno saved in close to the end of the match. He's only 17 years old. Is that correct? That's insane.
That is correct. He's now the youngest player ever to play for the first league outfit in the Bundesliga. So he's damn young.
But he showed some real promise. What is he? Obviously, Stuttgart, we know that their youth academy is one of the better ones, one of the best ones in Germany, and traditionally so anyway. What are the prospects with Werner?
To be honest, I'm not probably the perfect judge of that because I don't. With me being living in Cologne, I don't see a lot of the matches of the youth teams or even the second team. So I can only go from the very little moments that I've seen there, and from what I heard from others that are a little bit closer to the team and to the city. And it's very promising. I mean, the question is why you bring him on in such a game, but
especially if you have Abdelauer on the bench.
Yes, exactly.
Seems a strange decision.
That was definitely an odd decision. But on the other hand, he was kind of the most dangerous player in the last quarter hour. So he was definitely promising. So I'd like to see more of him. The question is, of course, if the team can help him to be successful, and if he fits in on a long haul.
Yeah, and it'll have something to do with if you have a trainer who enjoys playing youth or younger players, because
that's definitely true. I mean, besides Rüdiger, who is only playing because so many of our central defenders are injured. We don't really have anyone coming through from the very successful youth and second teams. So it's about time that we have someone having his breakthrough to the professional team. And yeah, it would be nice if Werner is that guy, and if Bruno actually subbed him on because he trusts in him and not as some others suspected it, just subbed him on to have a little less criticism because he subbed on a young guy.
Of course, the podcast of the Stuttgart game can't go without mentioning Jens, whose theory I thought was quite interesting, that Labadia has kind of learnt from his mistakes at Leverkusen and Hamburg, where he didn't give the sort of big players the respect that big players want to have, and that he sort of tends to bow to the pressure of the big players at Stuttgart, and thus neglecting possibly the younger ones.
Yep, that's theory. I know about that theory, and it's definitely a tempting theory. I don't have many arguments against it.
And Jens has many theories. If any of you have been following his Twitter feed at Jens1893 for the past day or so, it's been a real roller coaster ride. Let's put it that way. All right. Anything else?
No, the second half was really unacceptable. I mean, it's we hardly put five balls together and five passes together, and just stood at the back. And Hepia was very unhappy about it. He recognized that we defended well, but playing against Stuttgart, who was a team which is kind of not really formed united yet and still in development and so on, we consolidated the team, and so I thought it was a pretty bad second half. And next week against Mönchengladbach, they've shown on Saturday that they in the top game that they can play very well and quick. We need to really step up, and so far, the two games. Some argue, it has been an easy start for us. 2 easy games so far, apparently. 2 easy opponents, but we need to control more the ball, and hopefully that will happen next game. Because otherwise, I don't see it as positive.
If I may jump in, how happy were you with the decisions that Hübje took in terms of personnel? That he first subbed off Son, which is kind of understandable because he didn't have a good game, replacing him with Hegeler, who is a little bit of an offensive-minded player, but not that much, and then also subbing off Kiesling and replacing him with another defender.
Yep.
I found that very odd. I mean, you were successful in the end, but as a fan, it would irritate you a little.
It seemed like we were on the last fixture playing against relegation, kind of, or in a 2-game decider, and we needed to defend an advantage, and we're down with 10 men or so. So, but at the time, it just showed how badly we were playing the second half. I think maybe the team was too tired or so. I don't really explain it, because we didn't put anything together really in the second half.
But if it's like this, I think it's okay to have three strong back players, defense players for the last 10 or 5 minutes and additional time. Of course, I was a bit like, what? Why Wolscheid? But at the end, I was happy we got the 3 points, and I think it's wrong to say no. In the last 10 minutes, we have to play offensive, and if nothing goes together, then it was a good reaction.
Well, yeah, you
shouldn't do that at the beginning of the second half.
He's going to be criticized if you go on to lose. Like when Bayern in the Champions League final in 2012, they took off Thomas Müller. Who came on for Thomas Müller? Do you remember?
I don't.
Oh.
A defender.
Yeah.
I don't follow Champions League.
No, I'm usually the eternal optimist when it comes to this sort of thing. But yeah, it was a surprise. It was surprising to have 5 defenders playing in the back there. But I kind of agree with what Frida said, that it's okay for maybe the last several minutes, especially if you're especially if you're not playing at home, for one, and you are trying to defend a lead. It's not something that we're necessarily used to seeing from Leverkusen, but by the same token, I was pretty excited to see that A, Stuttgart didn't score, and B, that we were able to kind of keep the defense was able to was able to hold up, basically. And it would be nice if with all the offensive firepower that went missing this weekend, it would be nice to be able to kind of rely on your defense when things aren't clicking up front.
But I mean, look, Son at the moment is not working. He's not working in the team yet. Sam, he was okay. Hegeler, he's not the Hegeler from last season. I don't know why they're selling
Don't you
on.
think Son needs some time?
Yeah, of course he needs time, but I'm just saying it's a warning. Not everything is perfect at the moment. Yeah, we are first in the table, but I think it's a warning signal. Just saying.
We're first only because of the alphabet. All right, well, let's wrap up the discussion of this game by going to our man of the match. And Marcel, we always, or when we remember, we try to pick a man of the match for the game. Each of us has our own vote, and we always ask the guest to vote as well. Your man of the match from the Stuttgart-Leverkusen game.
Good question. At the beginning, I would have said...
Stuttgart player 2.
Yeah, I just wanted to say in the beginning I would have actually chosen Schwab probably, because I liked him really a lot in the three man lineup there. But yeah, I probably have to go with Spahic ultimately, because he was really good.
And we didn't even mention, thank you for reminding us, that we had gone
Didn't
back
talk about the goal at all.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh, God.
But I think it's a goal that probably doesn't deserve all that much mention, other than from the pure irony that Daniel Schwab scored it. Daniel Schwab, who never once in his career at Leverkusen scored a goal for us, and then in the very first game against us does score a goal for us. So, yeah. Marcel, sorry about that, but he did encouragingly look very good prior to that mistake.
Yep, definitely.
All right, Patrick, man of the match.
Bernd Leno. He had an amazing save in the 86th minute. I mean, come on.
He did. And
Does he get paid to do that?
Everybody can choose who he wants.
It's not for the aftermatch entertainment.
All right, excellent. Frida, how about you?
Spahic again.
All right, Spahic from Frida. Tom?
Because it's not a popularity contest, and I'm choosing Giulio Donati. He really put his body on the line to defend the lead. I thought he was brilliant, and he certainly pushes my buttons.
And he certainly had his buttons pushed at one point during that match. As you say, Tom, he put his body on the line. And my vote goes to Ömer Toprak, who was absolutely majestic in the middle of the pitch there. And along with Spahic, I think that partnership is working out wonderfully. Marcel, before we let you go, just one last question to you in terms of Bruno Labbadia, who is such a polarizing figure, as we're all aware. Where do you stand on him? Do you see, has Stuttgart, obviously Stuttgart has given him a lot of time. Is it time for a change, or can you see going forward with him a little while longer to see if things improve?
I can see going with him, going forward with him a little bit longer, but not to my liking, unfortunately. But that's more. I think I've tweeted about it before the season. It's a good bet that Bruno will get fired at some point, but I don't think he will be the first coach to be sacked. So I fear that we have to endure him for probably until into November. But I hope that we can close this chapter then, because I don't see the team having much opportunities to develop in a very positive way under him.
Well, he is doing a very good job of making himself one of the least popular trainers with opposing team fans, as he makes every stop, it seems, on the Bundesliga map.
He soon needs to find a job outside of the country.
I think that may be the best for him going forward. Marcel, we wish you the best, and we thank you very much for taking part today and talking to us. It's been a lively discussion and very interesting, and thanks so much for taking the time out.
Thank you, guys. I really enjoyed it. It was I was kind of a little bit skeptic in terms of talking in English about football, but it was a real pleasure. So I enjoyed it a lot. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. And guys, I think that's probably that's we've gone on long enough. There's no need necessarily for a second part. I think we're going to wrap it up here. I just mention briefly just a couple of news items. One, the Mirror was reporting that Arsenal is making a bid for Lars Bender here in the next couple of days for approximately 30 million euro. We'll see if that comes to fruition, and I'm fairly certain that Lars Bender will be able to not win trophies with us just as easily as he can with Arsenal. And then the last thing to mention is that today is Emir Spahic's birthday, so from Frida especially, Neverkusen crew wishes him, one of our regular listeners, a happy birthday. All right, well, thank you to the listeners for joining the Neverkusen crew again today. We'll talk to you next week about the upcoming match against Borussia Mönchengladbach. And if you have any questions or things you want to share, feel free to tweet us at NeverkusenPod on Twitter, and you can find all of our individual Twitter accounts on that account as well. Patrick, Frida, Tom, have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Yeah, have a good one. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Patrick.
Still sleeping.
Give me danger.